Congresswoman, do you know anything about that, whether or not Kevin McCarthy and Donald Trump talked and the president tried to reach out to, in effect, get their story straight about what happened in that January 6th phone call?
Leader McCarthy has spoken to a number of people in large groups and small groups since the 6th about his exchanges with the president. He's spoken publicly on the House floor about his view of the president's responsibility. I think it's very important that, he clearly has facts about that day, that an investigation into what happened, into the president's actions, ought to get to the bottom of. And I think that he has important information that needs to be part of any investigation, whether it's the FBI, the Department of Justice, or this commission that I hope will be set up.
There's an ominous hint from Congresswoman Liz Cheney there that House GOP leader Kevin McCarthy might be withholding information about his conversations with Trump about and during the Capitol insurrection, and that it just might be a matter for either the federal investigation into January 6th or a potential independent commission. With the vote on setting up the commission set to happen as soon as this week, fallout from the insurrection front and center on Capitol Hill. One Democratic congressman calling for the censure of 3 Republicans who last week tried to whitewash the Capitol attack at a hearing. One of them, Georgia's Andrew Clyde, who claimed on Wednesday that there was no insurrection because the rioters didn't breach the House chamber and that the attack looked like a, quote, normal tourist visit. And what was Clyde doing during that normal tourist visit? Well, here he is, seen barricading the doors to the House against the attackers who are trying to force their way in on the day of the normal tourist visit. For more on all this, Betsy Woodruff Swan is here, national correspondent for Politico and an MSNBC contributor, and Claire McCaskill's back as well. Betsy, what is it that makes a human being say what he said? We took that hearing last week. We covered it. We saw him sort of dodge reporters afterward, our own colleague Leanne Caldwell, to call it a tourist visit and not an insurrection, and then to be on camera helping to barricade the door. What is that?
One of Congressman Clyde's Republican colleagues told a colleague of mine at Politico that he viewed it as, quote unquote, comically stupid, which I think is maybe one of the better ways of characterizing the remarks from Congressman Clyde. If we look at it from a slightly more mercenary perspective, which is usually a safe way to view the way that Republicans are responding to the January 6th insurrection, what we could surmise is that Clyde, perhaps calculatingly, has decided there's more political gain to be won from being a truther or a denialist about what happened on January 6th and by telling the truth. And at least within the House Republican Conference, at least over the last 2 weeks, that mercenary perspective is correct. Look at what happened to Liz Cheney being booted out of House leadership. The reality is, even though Clyde might be uniquely, quote unquote, comically stupid, in the word of his colleague, Congressman Kelly Armstrong, he's not actually that far off from where the Republican Party has moved in the Trump era.
Claire, it's some sick stuff to be so disingenuous to your own conduct and experience on the day of an attack where the attackers were chanting "Hang Mike Pence," where you were scared enough to help barricade the door.
Yeah, I think these guys have gotten into a habit of thinking they can lie with impunity and that there will be nobody that will be able to fact check them. Or if they can, it won't matter because they're saying what they need to say to hold on to power within a Republican Party that is dominated by people who have embraced the biggest lie of all. So, I remember the old days when there were actually people that were in office that were afraid of lying, afraid they'd get caught lying, afraid that they would be exposed lying. I mean, that used to be the norm. And now these guys are like, hey, we had the liar in chief for 4 years and he's our guy. So if what we need to say is a big fat whopper, a big fat lie, like these were tourists, and there's a picture that shows me trying to barricade the House chamber against these violent mob that was attacking police officers with the American flag. So who cares? They're going to cover it on the right-wing channels the way I want it covered, that I'm on Trump's side. It is stunning to me that they are doing the math and think somehow this race to solidify the Trump base is all they're ever going to need. And frankly, they're not paying attention to how elections actually work in terms of who holds the ultimate power in our system.
Betsy, what is Chris Wallace getting at with Liz Cheney? Is there some scuttle that Kevin McCarthy has some exposure in terms of trying to get stories straight with Donald Trump?
That was a really scintillating moment there. And it certainly seems like both Wallace and Liz Cheney were sort of alluding to the possibility that McCarthy and Trump would have spoken about the way that they were going to discuss this topic. What we know for sure is that McCarthy bent over backwards to be as accommodating as humanly possible to Trump during the campaign and while Trump was president. It was such a marked difference between the way former Speaker Paul Ryan acted. I almost feel like I'm talking about ancient history, bringing up an era when Paul Ryan could be voted leader of the House Republican Conference. But it was such a huge difference between the way Paul Ryan at least spoke rhetorically and the way McCarthy has behaved. McCarthy has courted Trump's ilk going back for many years now. Unlike his Republican predecessor, who did a lot to reach out to very pro-Trump publications, including Breitbart, decided to invest in sort of that wing of the Republican Party. And now what we're seeing is the possibility that he could be mixed up in whatever this commission ends up investigating, which is perhaps why it's a little bit of a head scratcher that he seems to be delaying or raising concerns or saying he still has to review the matter as to whether or not he would support bringing in a bipartisan commission, even though the top Republican on the powerful House Homeland Committee has already said that he agrees that this is the right thing to do and they need to move forward on it.
And Claire, just to say, it's always worth noting that this doesn't matter to me as what happened to the Republicans. I mean, Trump happened, grab him in the bleep happened, but it matters as a threat to all of us and frankly, everyone else that works on the Capitol. Here's Liz Cheney on that topic, the Republicans as a threat.
Former President Trump continues to be a real danger. What he's doing and what he's saying, his claims, his refusal to accept decisions by the courts, his claims continued as recently as yesterday that somehow this election was stolen. You know, what he's doing is he's causing people to believe that they can't count on our electoral process to actually convey the will of the people. You know, we have to be a nation of laws. If you continue to if you reject the rulings of the courts, if you work against the rulings of our courts, then you really are at war with the Constitution. And he is a continuing danger to our system.
So they know that. They know that what Liz Cheney is saying is right in their heart of hearts. They also know that this country is under an unprecedented threat advisory for domestic violent extremism, something that in a post 9/11 world is just extraordinary, that we're at graver threat from our neighbors than any sort of international terrorist organization. Do you think there's a bottom for what Betsy's describing, this sort of comically idiotic whitewashing of something that threatened all of them?
No, I don't think there's a bottom, but I do think there's a civil war. I think that Republicans hope that somehow they can distract people with the border or with Joe Biden, whether or not he's doing push-ups or whatever the silly cultural war thing of the day is. But here's the bottom line. They have a huge chasm in their party. And this commission vote is a big darn deal, because if, in fact, the majority of the Republicans reject a commission that was negotiated on a bipartisan basis, that the Republican ranking member of the committee said, we got what we wanted. There is no way that it can be politicized. An equal number of Democrats and Republicans. Everybody has to sign off on subpoenas. But it's the right thing to get to the bottom of what happened, because we never want to have those pictures splashed across the world again. And if they stand up and vote against it, then you are going to see a hardening of the lines in the Republican Party. And frankly, that's nothing but good news for Joe Biden and the Democrats in the midterms.
Hey, thanks for watching our YouTube channel. You should know that you can follow today's top stories and breaking news and catch up on your favorite MSNBC shows all in one place. Download the NBC News app today.